So this has been circulating around the blogosphere for a couple days now. We're going to start here because good old Joe Biden. Turns out Joe Biden lied about a couple things. One of them, he lied about marching in the civil rights movement. You know, him and Bernie have a lot in common. Bernie marched in the civil rights movement. Biden lied about marching in the civil rights movement. Isn't that interesting? All right, so let's go into this. Joe Biden, the headline here is that Biden lied about marching with civil rights movement and claimed it had no policy agenda. So an article highlighting the failures of Joe Biden's first presidential campaign touched on one particularly problematic gaffe in which Biden lied about marching with the civil rights movement. So in the first three paragraphs, the Times' Matt Flegenheimer noted how staffers for Biden's unsuccessful 1988 campaign tried to get their candidate to stop lying about being in civil rights marches. Biden also suggested the movement didn't do marches with a 12-point program, but simply to change attitudes. That's what Biden said. So here's the quote that Biden would say. When I marched in the civil rights movement, I did not march with a 12-point program, Mr. Biden thundered, testing his presidential message in February 1987 before a New Hampshire audience. I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes, and we changed attitudes. More than once, advisors, this is from the New York Times article, more than once, advisors had gently reminded Mr. Biden of the problem with this formulation. He had not actually marched during the civil rights movement. And more than once, Mr. Biden assured them he understood and kept telling the story anyway. Paul Waterman from the Washington Post says implying that the civil rights movement didn't have a policy agenda is utterly ignorant and offensive. New Republic contributing editor Jeet Hare says this is going to be such a problem if he's the nominee. Hey, I wasn't really part of it and I didn't march there, except I did march there, and let me tell you, they have no policy agenda. Joe Biden lied about marching in the civil rights movement. Good job, Joe. And by the way, there's statistics out there that supports the theory that I said a couple days ago, that the reason Joe Biden isn't out there doing a whole lot is because his campaign knows already he has an inability to raise his poll numbers. The more he talks, the less people will like him. The more he talks, the more that's going to come out about his past, and that guy has more baggage than the Atlanta airport. And we're already seeing a bunch of it. The primaries barely started. We're already seeing a bunch of it. There's going to be a bunch more. I think in some ways he would do even worse than Hillary Clinton if he's the nominee. Which it doesn't matter if it's worse. It's still going to be a loss. He's going to lose. Or he would lose if he's the nominee. But I think he will be even worse positioned than Hillary Clinton was. If you would have told me in 2017 that that's possible, I would have said no. I would have said there's no way. But, looking at the way things have gone for Joe Biden in recent, 2016 Joe Biden probably would have beat Trump, because I think a lot of that stuff about him wouldn't have come to the surface. He was still just friendly Uncle Joe to people. He was just the guy that had the bromance with Obama and was the wiser, older person behind Obama. That's what people saw him as. None of it was true. It was just complete bullshit. They just kind of made up that persona because he was so behind the scenes and he didn't do anything. Nonetheless, I think that fake persona would have given him enough to beat a Donald Trump. But 2020, he's not beating Donald Trump. Now that persona is gone and we see the real Joe Biden, that person will lose to Donald Trump. So, and he lied about marching in the civil rights movement. That's, so far, what all has the Biden campaign accomplished? Well, he started his campaign with a bunch of executives from Comcast at a dinner. Bernie started it talking to legions of people in Brooklyn. Biden started it at a Comcast executive dinner. He's creeped people out because he doesn't know the concept of personal space. And he's made jokes about it that have been not well received on the blogosphere. His rallies look like a potluck bingo dinner. There's like 20 people at a lot of them. I mean, you saw when he entered that gymnasium and just a couple people clapped and there was, And now they're not even having him do events because they know the more he talks, the less people are going to like him. You want to try to coast on that name recognition because the more he talks, the less people will like him. And it's always been that way because in the 80s, he used to lie about marching in the civil rights movement. And he was fine with it. His staff reminded him, hey, you're lying about that. Why would you want to work for somebody who does that? Why would you want to work for somebody who knowingly lies about something very significant like the civil rights movement and then also bashes the movement, subtly bashes, says that they don't have a policy agenda when it's like you weren't even there? Joe Biden. And you know, I know some people out there that want to try to defend Joe Biden. They're like, well, isn't it fair to say he's evolved? No, it's not fair to say that because here's what Joe Biden has proven throughout his entire career. His opinions and convictions are up for sale to the highest bidder, so he will always be on the side of the status quo and the oligarchy. That's what he has proven throughout history. And even his own words support that. You can find a clip of Joe Biden when he was younger saying, I was ready to take their money and prostitute myself. He's referring to the donor class. That's literally a quote from him. So no, it's not, oh, well, Joe Biden's evolved. No, he hasn't evolved. He's been the exact same. Status quo, I got your back. Oligarchy, I got your back because I know where the gravy train's at. And I like that gravy train. That's Joe Biden. That's all he's ever been. That's all he will ever be. One thing he's not going to be is president because he would lose to Donald Trump. So if Biden's the nominee, we're stuck with Trump. And that's horrible news for the frickin' world. All right, so Joe Biden lying about civil rights, marching in the civil rights movement. Good job, Joe Biden. Way to go. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your